it's necessary to use this, I will, just to make sure everyone can hear me. But first off, thank you for the invitation, for allowing me to come and speak today, and also for able to be here the last couple of weeks, just to get to know some more of you. And it's nice after 5 months in the district to be able to go into a place and actually see some familiar faces. When you move to somewhere brand new where you really don't know people, there's always a personal adjustment. And so I feel so much better 5 months in to start to see familiar faces and start to recognize people when I'm out and about in the community here. I'm really honored and humbled to be here today as the Dublin superintendent. It's a wonderful position. I'm just as excited today as I was on August 1st. And as humbled today as I was on August 1st to be the superintendent of this great school system. Steve shared a little bit about me from the standpoint. The last 9 years, I've been a superintendent up in the Cleveland area at Olmsted Falls City Schools. That's a district of around 4,000 students. So coming here to Dublin, 15,000 students. And I want to share some things that you may or may not know about the school system, but we are actually the 10th largest school system now in the state of Ohio. It's really amazing, and especially if you've lived in this community for a number of years, the growth in student enrollment and the development, the quality development of this community. And now Dublin City Schools is one of the 10 largest school systems in the state of Ohio. And I'll circle back and talk a little bit about that in a few moments here. I want to share a little bit about myself and then share, as Steve said, some of my impressions about Dublin City Schools. And first off, it's also just a great opportunity working with Steve. And Steve is one of the most talented treasurers in the state of Ohio and one of the finest persons I've ever had the challenge of working with here. Steve is not a treasurer per se, but a true CFO. And that is meant to be a compliment. He just is education minded. And I've worked in school systems where the treasurer was all about dollars and cents and not understanding about boys and girls. And Steve really understands education, and that's a real credit, and he's just a great person to work with. So Steve, thank you.
That's a fine.
These close work, that's right. 16 years, this is your 16 as a school superintendent. I love what I do. I am just absolutely passionate, and I'm a zealot for public education. I think public education as an institution is one of the things that has made our country just the success that it is. And so being a part and having the ability to work with students and truly shape our future is just something that really jazzes me up each and every day here. And Dublin City Schools does such a fine job at that. I started as a math teacher out of college. I grew up in Northwest Ohio, up near Findlay, Ohio, if you're familiar with that. Father was a farmer. Mother was a teacher, first grade teacher for 30 years. And that's probably what was my influence to, number one, not go into farming and go into education. I'll tell you, working in a profession where your livelihood and your income depends on whether it rains or not, it's just not for me. But that was a long history in my family of being a farm family. And it really, though, instilled in me the work ethic, the hard work, and the understanding also that you can't get things done overnight. As a farmer, you understand you've got to work the ground, you've got to plant the seed, you've got to care for the plant, and at the end, after all your hard work, you can reap the harvest. And really, that's what public education is all about as well. You bring children in at the age of 5, and sometimes children with disabilities you're bringing in at the age of 3. And you're working with those children, and you're tending to their needs, and you're working with them for a long period of time, so that at the end of their high school career, when they walk across that stage, that they are all set with the skills they need to be successful for the rest of their life. So I just feel it was a real great upbringing to come from and have my parents involved in those two occupations there. Did most of my schooling at Bowling Green State University. For the first 35 years of my life, I lived within 20 miles of Bowling Green. It was just so convenient. Math undergrad, master's and doctorate all from VG. Started as a math teacher, Van Buren local schools. Left to go over to Defiance County. I was a high school principal for 3 years. And got the call back to go back to Van Buren to be the superintendent. And that was an interesting journey, I'll say, because as I mentioned a few moments ago, my mother was a first grade teacher, and she was a teacher in that district that I went back to be superintendent with. And that was an interesting little thing to be in that, as far as who was the boss and who was the superintendent, those were two different really enjoyed it. I was at Van Buren 6 years, and that's a small rural school, 975 kids, K through 12. And as small as that is, that's really the norm for most schools in the state of Ohio. In and around central Ohio here, we're used to some large school districts, but you go out 20, 30 miles, and Ohio is still a rural state, and there are so many school districts in the state of Ohio that are 1,000 students or less, K-12. And so that's a real challenge from the state level, policy-wise, to deal with 612 different school districts, some of which are 30,000 students, and some of which are about 400 students, K-12. Trying to have public policy that covers all of those institutions is a real challenge. After 6 years as superintendent at Van Buren, I went over to the Cleveland area, Homestead Falls City Schools, about 4,000 students, loved it there. Cleveland is a great place. I don't know if anybody has spent any time in Northeast Ohio. I went over there largely thinking, Browns and Indians and Cavaliers, being kind of a sports person, but it's just a wonderful, and the arts up in Cleveland. It was a real joy to live up there, and my wife and I have 4 children, and they really enjoyed it up there. A year ago at this time, I thought I'd probably retire from Homestead Falls City Schools. And next week, I'm actually heading to a conference, and it was this conference 1 year ago that I'd known Dave Axner, my predecessor at Dublin. I've known Dave since his time up in the Cleveland area, but it was a year ago at this conference when he shared with me that he was retiring and this position was going to be open. And Dave and his wife, Chris, had dinner with my wife, Angie, and I, and we talked about these possibilities. And it's interesting, I think when you're part of a very successful organization, you're rarely out looking for your next position, but because you're part of a successful organization, sometimes things come to you. And that's really what it was in this opportunity here in Dublin. I just feel, again, so blessed that this door opened for me so that my family and I could come down to this wonderful community. My wife, Angie, and I, we have 4 children. Our oldest daughter, Erin, is a freshman at Ohio State. Little did she know a year ago that when she got accepted to be a Buckeye, that Mom and Dad would, we are truly the ultimate in helicopter parents. But it's been a wonderful experience for her to be a Buckeye. She lives down on campus, and the last couple of weeks when she was home over Christmas break for the first time, I had parents tell me when your first child goes off to college and then when they come home for the first time, that's an interesting experience. That's exactly what I found. When they're used to living on their own for 5 months and they come home, wow. It's like curfews and cars and just their lifestyle changes a lot. But Erin's a freshman at Ohio State, health science major, wants to be a physician's assistant. My second daughter, Megan, is a sophomore at Kaufman. My third daughter, Rachel, is a 7th grader at Sells. And my son, Isaac, is a 5th grader at Indian Run Elementary School. We were fortunate enough to purchase a house walking distance from the board office on Kaufman Road. In fact, Mike's wife, Chris, and his daughter, Ellie, were instrumental in helping us, because I'll tell you, the real estate market down here, very, very fast. And we learned quickly that if you saw a house and didn't make an offer like that, you were not going to get that house. And really appreciate all the efforts, because it was a real blessing for us. We are, again, just right north of Kaufman High School. Great little neighborhood right there, and really enjoying the neighborhood and our house, and just also that proximity to schools. Friday night, with our daughter going to Kaufman, she can walk to the game. Tends to be then she walks with 2 or 3 friends and comes back to our house with about 15 kids. And I don't know, but I like that. That's cool that she's quickly integrated. Dublin is a school